What's going on, everybody? Good morning, and here we are, the Friday before free agency starts, and we're going to go ahead and hit the ground running with draft stuff. And we're only going to be able to do a few days worth before the free agency waves start to hit us. So we're going to get through like a couple of positional groups here, but you know what? Why not start now? Why not get a little bit of an early start? I know that draft stuff is always a little bit awkward to talk about when you don't even know what's going to happen in free agency, but we can talk about these players. We can still talk about what they can do and what they bring to the table, right? Like, there's no reason why we need to know who we're going to sign or who we're not going to sign to not still be able to say things about these players. So, let's start with some prospect evaluation. Our first position is tight end. As of the start of the league year in a few days, less than a week, tight end is probably our biggest position of need, just in the sense that we literally don't have one. We do not have any tight ends right now. Disley's been cut. Parkinson's a free agent. Fant's a free agent. The guy we got from the Eagles, who played like 5 snaps last year, is a free agent. We literally don't have one. If the season started right now, Jake Bobo would probably be tight end 1. And then tight end 2 would be probably Mac Brown, our tight end coach. So we need one, and we might find one in the draft. So this first video is going to focus in on the tight ends that are going to go, in all likelihood, in the top 100. So that would be the first 3 days, basically. The first 100 picks encompass basically the first 3 rounds, minus a little bit of stuff at the end because of all the compensatory picks. This year, there are really only 2 tight ends that are likely to go in the top 100. There's one guy who's going to go in the first, one guy who's going to go in the second. That's it. Let's break them down. The first round guy is, of course, the great Brock Bowers of the Georgia Bulldogs. Going to be 21. And by the way, this goes for every player that we look at for this series. The age is the age they're going to be when the season starts. So I think the season starts like September 5th. That's their age when the season starts, because that's really what we care about, right? So Brock Bowers still going to be 21 when the season starts. Measured out at the combine at 6'3", 243 pounds, 32 and 3/4 inch arms, 9 and 3/4 inch hands. Every big board that I utilize for this series has him in the top 10. A couple have him in the top 5. The aggregate has him 9th. Now, keep in mind, the aggregate is also taking into account a lot of smaller big boards. They're taking into account a lot of like these smaller sites that most people haven't heard of. They're taking into account a lot of the stuff on like SB Nation blogs. So they're getting a very big sample size. But I do think that they're valuable on top of looking at the more well-known sites like PFF, Tankathon, ESPN, CBS, and the Draft Network and Walter Football. Last 2 years, he's been very productive. He missed several games last season for Georgia, but in the 10 games he played, 56 catches, 714 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And the year before that, when he played the whole season, he gave you nearly 1,000 yards. In fact, I think if you count rushing yards, he had over 1,000 yards from scrimmage on 63 catches and 7 touchdowns. So, Brock Bowers, very productive in college. And I'm just going to say this. I'm going to say it. It's bold. I don't know if it's actually the case or not, but this might be the greatest tight end prospect ever. I think Bowers is clearly a better prospect than Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts wasn't even really a tight end. I think Bowers is clearly better than TJ Hawkinson or Eric Ebron or Kellen Winslow Jr. I can't think of a tight end who, coming out of college, was better than Bowers is right now. And I know some people may misinterpret what I just said, so, don't give me any Rob Gronkowski or Travis Kelce or anybody like that. Those guys were not even considered to be great prospects when they came out. They ended up being much more than expected when they hit the NFL. Bowers, going into the NFL, should be perceived as, I believe, the most talented, capable tight end prospect probably ever. 3 years of remarkable production for an elite offense. Really good acceleration. He gets up to his top speed very quickly. He explodes out of his stance. He's deadly with the ball in his hands. That might be his best skill. He is great with yards after the catch, using elusiveness and some power to get things done after the catch. He's a fantastic all-around athlete. He didn't do anything at the combine other than get measured, but he's a great athlete. Great route runner, runs great routes, understands how to find the holes in zone coverage, kind of like how JSN does. He's got excellent hands. Very rarely does he drop a pass. He's a quality inline blocker, even though he's a little bit on the smaller side compared to most tight ends. He's got great ball skills. He's got a big catch radius, so he's going to win in tight coverage. You can throw the ball up to him, and he's going to go get it. You can count on him. Always giving high effort. And you look at the way Georgia used him. They used him as an inline tight end. They used him as a slot receiver. They used him a little bit as an outside receiver. So whatever you want him to do, he should be able to do it. There was no indication that he could only do one thing or even only do two things. So this is a very special prospect. And if you take a look at the issues that he might have, I have some cons here. Still has some room to grow as a blocker, but he's 21 years old, right? Like, what would you expect? And he's such a good pass catcher, why would you even ask him to block all that much? I think he can improve. I think he's got to improve his hand placement a little bit. He's got to improve his footwork a little bit. But he's not a bad blocker right now. Georgia utilized him in a very specific way that meant that he didn't run a lot of routes. He's a good route runner, but his route tree is limited. Mostly because I think Georgia's game plan was to get him the ball. Just get him the ball in space and have him go do things after the catch. So the routes were simplified. The routes were more underneath things. When he gets to the NFL, he's going to have to expand his route tree. He did not have to face very much man coverage, and he had to face very little press coverage at the college level because Georgia was able to put him in those situations where he wouldn't have to deal with that stuff. So he may struggle when he's being put in press coverage. He may struggle a little bit when put in man coverage, but I think he's a good enough athlete to beat linebackers one-on-one, and he's got enough size to beat safeties one-on-one. So I do think it'll work out. His measurables are not great, right? Like 6'3", 243 pounds is okay, but there are much bigger tight ends out there. So he's not as big as you might have expected. His measurables are actually a little bit below average. But I don't think that's something that affects his game negatively, but it is something that people are going to draw attention to. So, yeah, my final evaluation on Bowers is that he's one of the best. And honestly, I think he's the best tight end prospect in NFL history. I think he's immediately going to make a big impact in the NFL as a yards after the catch guy. I think he's going to improve as a blocker. And once he picks up a route tree, a bigger route tree, I think he's going to be one of the best tight ends in the league, maybe as early as year 2. So you're getting a great all-around player in Brock Bowers if you draft him. And for me, he's worthy of a top 5 pick. And if he slips down to 16 where the Seahawks are, I'm going to have to go take a shower. We get to pick 14 and nobody's picked up Bowers. I need to go take a shower because I'm getting so excited. But honestly, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I think a lot of the Bauer stuff is smoke. I don't think this guy gets out of the top 10 at all. He's too good. He's just too good to not be picked in that top 10. But if he's there at 16, I'm all over it immediately. Dude is awesome. All right, so we got a second guy we're going to look at in this video. The only other tight end who I think is likely to go in the top 100 right now, JaTavion Sanders, the Texas Longhorn tight end, also 21 years old. He's certainly not the finished all-around product of Bowers, but he's a very intriguing and fun tight end athlete. 6'4", 245 pounds, so not big, but not terribly small either. There are definitely bigger tight ends out there. Almost 33-inch arms, nice. Over 10-inch hands, pretty big. Pretty sizable in that area. 4.69 40, and I watched this combine. I watched his 40. He beefed both of his 40s. So that's still 71st percentile, by the way. His 40 time was 71st percentile, and he slipped. He almost fell over. If he ran a clean 40, if you actually got him on a clean 40 time, it would probably be much better. Still 71st percentile. 10-yard split was 1.59, which is really good for a tight end. And that tells you that if he actually ran a clean 40, he'd probably be one of the more speedier tight ends ever. 4.32 20-yard shuttle was 64th percentile. Pretty good. You look at the big boards, pretty much every big board has him somewhere in the second round, except for the Draft Network. They have him at the bottom of the first. The aggregate has him in the mid to late second. I think that's probably where he lands. That's probably where he ends up. Over the last 2 years, he's been quite productive for a really good Texas offense, playing with Quinn Ewers. Last year had almost 700 yards, 45 catches, only 2 touchdowns, but was making a lot of big plays. And remember, he's competing with some elite receivers for catches because Texas had Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell. And the year before that, he was also very good, 54 catches, 613 yards. So one thing that immediately jumps out is that in 2023, he became much more of a big play threat, averaging far more yards per catch. So this guy's a great athlete for a tight end. Again, the testing numbers don't really do him justice. I think he will do much better at his pro day. He's great at making plays after the catch. You get the ball in his hands. He's going to use his elusiveness and even a little bit of power to do things after he gets the ball in his hands. He's a downfield receiving threat. He's somebody who can run vertical routes and challenge a defense deep. There's some versatility in his usage and his lineups. They used him as a inline tight end. They used him as a slot tight end receiver. They used him as an outside receiver. So they lined him up all over the place in Texas. However you want to use him, should work fine. He's great with the contested catch stuff. You throw him the ball when he's in tight coverage. If he's not open, he is open. He's going to go up and get it. He's going to go up and do everything he can to bring the ball in. Great ball skills, great hands all around. He's a quality route runner as well. I think maybe he's even a little more developed as a route runner than Bowers, and I love Bowers. And I feel like he's going to do more at the NFL level than he did in college. I think his NFL production and his NFL play sold him a little bit short as a player, and I think he'll build on that in a positive way when he gets to the NFL and finds an offense built around him. He does leave a lot to be desired as a blocker. He may end up being one of those Jimmy Graham types. I don't think it'll be that bad, but he's not going to do a lot as an NFL inline blocker. He's got technique to clear up. He doesn't really have the size or strength to ever be great at it. He might be able to be like a move blocker, like a blocker in space. But in terms of blocking in line, that might be a little DOA. His strength and technique are both lacking in that regard, so there's a lot to work on. And odds are good he'll just never be that good at it. I do think that at the NFL level, he will probably be more of a slot guy like a Jimmy Graham. And at the college level, he was mostly an inline tight end. Not all the time, of course, like I said. He was mostly an inline tight end. So that's going to be an adjustment for him when he comes to the NFL if he does become more of a slot guy. And also, you question the fit in Seattle because we already have a slot guy. So he's got a lot to learn if he wants to become a complete tight end, but he's very talented, and he's going to be a great weapon in the passing game. There's no doubt about that. I have no doubt about that. It's just the blocking stuff that makes me wonder. He brings pretty much everything you want to the table in terms of his ability to get the ball in his hands and make plays. Value at all levels of the field. Upside to be more than he was even at the college level. I think he might be a first-round caliber player that you're going to be able to get in the second because his production was stunted by the offense that he played in with such good receivers. Like JaTavion Sanders in a normal college offense that didn't have 2 borderline first-round receivers might have had 1,000 yards. And then people would be more overlooking of his shortcomings as a blocker. He might be a late first-round pick. As it stands, he's probably going to be like mid-second. So I think there's going to be good value here. And as long as you're willing to accept his limitations, I think he'd be a great fit for pretty much any team. As for the Seahawks, it really depends on your willingness to have him line up in line as a real tight end, knowing that he's not a very good blocker and probably never will be. So it depends. But those are the 2 tight ends that I view as likely candidates for the top 100. Future videos will cover the rest of the guys. Let me know what you guys think about these 2, however. The 2 big tight ends of this draft. See you guys later. Go Hawks.